Dr. Zara Okafor had been listening to the stars for 30 years, and they had never said a single word back to her. Every morning she walked into the massive radio telescope facility in New Mexico, hoping that today would be the day humanity finally heard from someone else in the universe. Every evening she walked out having heard nothing but the endless static of empty space. "Still no luck?" asked her research assistant, Tom Bradley, as he brought her the morning's coffee. Tom was young and enthusiastic, full of hope that they would eventually make contact with alien civilizations. Zara envied his optimism. "Nothing," she replied, adjusting the telescope's frequency settings for what felt like the millionth time in her career. 30 years of searching, and the universe remains completely silent. Zara was one of the world's leading experts in xenolinguistics, which was the study of alien languages. The irony was not lost on her that she had spent her entire professional life preparing to understand languages that no human had ever heard. She had developed translation protocols, communication systems, and cultural exchange programs for species that might not even exist. "Maybe we are looking in the wrong places," Tom suggested as he reviewed the data from their latest deep space scans. "Or maybe aliens communicate in ways we do not understand yet." "Tom, we have tried everything," Zara said with frustration in her voice. "Radio waves, laser pulses, mathematical sequences, even quantum entanglement experiments. If there is intelligent life out there, they are either not talking or something is preventing us from hearing them." The problem had puzzled scientists for over a century. According to every statistical model and probability calculation, the galaxy should be filled with intelligent civilizations. Earth's radio telescopes should have detected hundreds of alien signals by now. The mathematics were clear. In a galaxy with billions of stars and potentially trillions of planets, Earth could not possibly be the only world with intelligent life. Yet the silence was absolute and complete. "Dr. Okafor," called Rebecca from the data analysis station, "I have something strange here. The new deep space probe we launched last month has gone completely silent." Zara walked over to Rebecca's workstation and studied the telemetry data. The probe had been functioning perfectly as it traveled away from Earth, sending back regular status reports and scientific measurements. Then, at exactly the same distance from Earth where every other deep space probe had failed, it simply stopped transmitting. "That is the 14th probe we have lost at that exact distance," Zara observed. "It is like there is an invisible wall around our solar system that blocks all communication. Or something that does not want us talking to the rest of the galaxy," Tom added quietly. Before Zara could respond to Tom's unsettling comment, her phone rang with a call that would change everything. Captain Maria Santos from the Space Exploration Division was calling with news about humanity's first successful faster-than-light space travel. "Dr. Okafor, we did it," Maria said with excitement in her voice. "The FTL test flight was a complete success. We traveled 3 light-years from Earth and back in just under 6 hours." "That is incredible news, Captain," Zara replied. "But what does this have to do with my research?" "The communication system worked perfectly during the entire flight," Maria explained. "We maintained constant contact with Earth even while traveling faster than light. Whatever is blocking our deep space probes does not seem to affect human-operated equipment." Zara felt her heart skip a beat. "Captain, are you telling me that human-operated communication systems can reach beyond our solar system?" "That is exactly what I am telling you. Dr. Okafor, I think it is time we found out what is really out there." 3 months later, Zara found herself aboard humanity's first interstellar exploration vessel, the Pathfinder. The ship was equipped with the most advanced communication equipment Earth could build, all of it designed to be operated by human crew members rather than automated systems. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge as they approached their destination, a star system designated Kepler 438 that showed signs of potentially habitable planets. "Dr. Okafor, are your translation systems ready?" "As ready as they can be," Zara replied from her workstation. "Though I have to admit, after 30 years of silence, I am not sure I will know what to do if we actually encounter intelligent life." The answer came sooner than anyone expected. As the Pathfinder entered orbit around the 4th planet in the system, their sensors detected massive artificial structures on the surface. Cities, transportation networks, and what appeared to be communication arrays covered large portions of the planet. "Captain, we are detecting life signs," reported Dr. Kevin Walsh, the ship's xenobiologist. "Thousands of them. This planet is definitely inhabited by intelligent beings." But when the human crew attempted to establish communication with the planet's inhabitants, they discovered something heartbreaking. The aliens were trying desperately to communicate with them, but they seemed shocked and amazed that the humans could actually hear their signals. The beings called themselves the Resonari, and they were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. They were tall and graceful, with bodies made of living crystal that vibrated with complex harmonic frequencies. These vibrations were their natural form of communication, creating beautiful music-like patterns that conveyed meaning and emotion. Through careful translation work, Zara began to understand the Resonari's story. Elder Chime of Stars, their oldest surviving leader, explained their tragic history through songs that made the human crew want to cry. "We were once part of a great community that spanned the entire galaxy," the elders sang through their translation system. Species from thousands of worlds shared knowledge, art, and friendship across the stars. We communicated through harmonic frequencies that could travel vast distances through space. "What happened to this galactic community?" Zara asked gently. 2,000 years ago, everything went silent," Chime of Stars replied, their crystal body dimming with sadness. "All forms of communication beyond our solar system simply stopped working. Radio signals, quantum transmissions, even our harmonic frequencies could no longer reach other worlds." Captain Santos leaned forward with growing understanding. "You have been isolated for 2,000 years? We sang into the empty darkness for centuries, hoping someone would answer," the elder continued. "Gradually, we began to believe that we were the last intelligent beings in the universe. We stopped reaching out. We stopped hoping." Dr. Walsh was scanning the planet's communication arrays and making disturbing discoveries. "Captain, their technology is incredibly advanced, far beyond anything we have developed on Earth. If their signals cannot penetrate whatever is blocking interstellar communication, then this is not a natural phenomenon." As the human crew spent more time with the Resonari, they learned about the crushing psychological impact of cosmic isolation. An entire civilization had slowly lost hope over the course of centuries, believing they were completely alone in an empty universe. "For generations, our children have been born into silence," Chime of Stars explained. "They have never known the joy of hearing another species' voice or sharing their songs with distant friends. The silence has become part of who we are. But now, for the first time in 2 millennia, the Resonari were hearing voices from beyond their world." The human crew's simple ability to communicate across space had broken a silence that the aliens had thought was permanent. "Are there others?" the elder asked with desperate hope. "Are there other species still alive out there in the darkness?" Zara looked at Captain Santos, then back at the Resonari leader. "We do not know yet. But we are going to find out." As the Pathfinder prepared to leave the Resonari homeworld, they left behind something that had not existed for 2,000 years. Hope. The human crew installed a communication relay that would allow the Resonari to send messages beyond their solar system for the first time since the Great Silence began. "Please," Elder Chime of Stars sang as the human ship prepared to depart, "if you find others out there, tell them we are still here. Tell them they are not alone." Captain Santos looked at the alien leader through the view screen, seeing centuries of loneliness and lost dreams in their crystalline features. "We will," she promised. "We will tell everyone we find." As the Pathfinder jumped back into faster-than-light travel, Zara realized that humanity had stumbled onto something much larger than a simple first-contact situation. Somewhere in the galaxy, something had deliberately cut off communication between intelligent species. An entire galactic civilization had been shattered and left to die in isolation. But humanity had somehow maintained the ability to communicate across space. They were the only species that could speak to the isolated civilizations scattered throughout the galaxy. For the first time in her career, Dr. Zara Okafor was not listening to silence. She was listening to the desperate voices of species that had been waiting 2,000 years for someone to answer their calls for help. And humanity was finally in a position to answer. The second world that humanity discovered broke Dr. Zara Okafor's heart in ways she had never expected. As the Pathfinder approached the planet that its inhabitants called Harmonial, the crew could detect beautiful but haunting music drifting through space from the planet's surface. "Dr. Okafor, you need to hear this," called Lieutenant Tom Bradley from the communication station. "The entire planet is broadcasting music, but it is unlike anything I have ever heard before." Zara put on her headphones and listened to the alien melodies flowing from the planet below. The music was technically perfect, incredibly complex, and absolutely heartbreaking. Every song was written in minor keys, every melody carried notes of loss and mourning, and every harmony seemed to weep for something that had been lost long ago. "Captain Santos," Zara said as she removed her headphones, "whatever species lives down there, they are in deep emotional pain." The Melody Weavers, as they called themselves, were perhaps the most artistic species humanity had encountered. Their cities were built like massive musical instruments, with architecture designed to create and amplify sound. Towers hummed in harmony with the wind, bridges chimed when people walked across them, and even their homes were tuned to produce gentle melodies. But everything was composed in minor keys. Every single structure, every piece of art, every song they created carried the same theme of loss and mourning. "Welcome, travelers from beyond the silence," said Master Composer Softwind through reeds as she greeted the human landing party. Her body was graceful and elongated, with skin that seemed to shimmer with musical vibrations. "Though I fear you have come to a world that has forgotten how to celebrate." Dr. Lisa Park, the mission's cultural anthropologist, studied the alien city around them with amazement and sadness. "Master Composer, your architecture is incredible, but why does everything sound so sad?" Softwind's expression became even more melancholy. "Because we have been composing requiems for 2,000 years, ever since the universal song ended." As the human crew learned more about Melody Weaver culture, they discovered that this species had once been the galaxy's greatest collaborative artists. They had created symphonies that spanned multiple star systems, with different species adding their unique voices to cosmic works of art that could be heard across light years. "Show them the archive of lost songs," suggested a younger Melody Weaver named Bright Note of Dawn. "Let them hear what we used to create when we were not alone." Softwind led the humans to a massive crystal structure at the center of the city. Inside, recordings of ancient music filled the air with sounds so beautiful that several crew members began to cry without understanding why. "This is what we called the universal song," Softwind explained as the music washed over them. Every species in the galaxy contributed their unique voice. The Resonari provided harmonic foundations with their crystal songs. The ethereal dancers added rhythm through their movement patterns. The mind singers contributed emotional depth through their telepathic melodies. The recordings showed humanity what galactic civilization had been like before the Great Silence. Dozens of species working together to create art that no single world could achieve alone. Music that told stories spanning generations, symphonies that celebrated the diversity of intelligent life, and collaborations that brought different cultures together in harmony. Then the silence came, Softwind continued, her voice heavy with grief. All communication between star systems simply stopped. We could no longer hear our artistic partners, could no longer contribute to the universal song. We have been composing funeral music ever since, mourning the death of galactic art. Engineer Jake Thompson had been working with Dr. Okafor to develop better communication relay systems based on their success with the Resonari. "Dr. Okafor, I think I can establish a link between this world and the Resonari homeworld. If it works, these species could actually talk to each other for the first time in 2,000 years." The technical work was challenging, requiring Jake to manually calibrate equipment that seemed to function only when operated by humans. Whatever force had created the Great Silence appeared to have no effect on human-operated communication systems, though no one understood why. "Captain, I am reading a successful connection," Jake reported with excitement. "The Melody Weavers and the Resonari are now linked through our communication relay." What happened next was one of the most beautiful moments in human history. The first interstellar artistic collaboration in 2 millennia began as the Resonari's crystal songs blended with the Melody Weaver's complex harmonies. Both species began creating music together in real time, their combined voices producing art that neither could achieve alone. "They are composing in major keys," Dr. Park observed with wonder as she watched the Melody Weavers react to hearing another species' voice. "For the first time in 2,000 years, they are creating happy music." Master Composer Softwind was crying as she conducted the combined alien orchestra. "I had forgotten what joy sounded like," she said through their translation system. "We have been mourning for so long that we forgot how to celebrate." But as humanity continued their exploration of the galaxy, they discovered that the pattern of isolation and despair was universal. Every advanced civilization they encountered had been cut off from the rest of the galaxy for exactly the same period of time. The Unity Collective had once shared consciousness across multiple star systems, their strength coming from millions of minds working together across vast distances. When the Great Silence hit, their network had shattered, leaving small groups scattered throughout space with no way to reunite. "We were one mind distributed across many bodies," explained Collective Node Prime 7 during humanity's first contact with their species. "The silence broke us into fragments. For 2,000 years, we have been trying to remember who we used to be." Dr. Rachel Martinez, humanities expert in group psychology, worked with Jake Thompson to establish communication links between the scattered Unity nodes. The reunion was overwhelming to witness as separated parts of the same collective consciousness rediscovered each other. Imagine being unable to think complete thoughts for 2,000 years, Dr. Martinez explained to the crew. That is what these beings have endured. They are literally putting their minds back together. The Starlight philosophers had once shared deep thoughts and profound questions across the galaxy, engaging in philosophical discussions that lasted centuries and involved dozens of species. Now they sat alone on their homeworld, asking questions that no one could answer. What is the purpose of wisdom if there is no one to share it with? Asked ancient thinker Deep Thought of Stars during their first conversation with humans. We have spent 2 millennia contemplating existence in complete isolation. Each species they encountered had a similar story. The cosmic gardeners had once terraformed worlds collaboratively, sharing techniques across light years. The memory keepers had maintained galactic history through shared archives. The dream weavers had connected sleeping minds across space, allowing beings to share dreams and experiences. All of them had been alone for 2,000 years. But establishing these communication networks was taking a serious toll on the human operators. Jake Thompson and his team were working around the clock to maintain the relay systems, and the psychological strain was becoming evident. Captain, Dr. Kevin Walsh reported with growing concern, our communication specialists are showing signs of severe stress. Prolonged exposure to the cosmic silence that has affected these alien species is beginning to impact our crew's mental health. Several human operators had begun experiencing the same crushing loneliness that had affected the alien civilizations. Even though they were surrounded by their fellow humans, they felt isolated and disconnected from everything around them. It is like the silence is contagious, explained communications specialist Rebecca Chin after her shift operating a relay station. When you connect with that cosmic emptiness, it gets inside your head and makes you feel like you are the only person in the universe. Captain Santos had to implement rotation schedules to prevent her crew from being overwhelmed by the isolation effect. But despite the psychological cost, the work continued because the results were undeniable. Species that had been silent for millennia were beginning to sing again. The Resonari's crystal songs now carried messages from the Melody Weavers. The Unity Collective was slowly rebuilding their shared consciousness across multiple worlds. The Starlight philosophers were engaging in their first multi-species debates in 2,000 years. Dr. Okafor, came an urgent transmission from Deep Space Monitoring Station. We are detecting massive artificial structures in the galactic core region. Whatever created the Great Silence, I think it is still out there. As humanity's communication network expanded across more star systems, they began to detect signs of the entity responsible for the cosmic isolation. Vast networks of dark energy seemed to span entire sectors of space, invisible to most sensors but clearly artificial in design. It is like a spider web, Jake observed as he studied the sensor data. Something has built a galaxy-spanning system specifically designed to block interstellar communication. Dr. Zara Okafor, coordinating the communication efforts from her station aboard the Pathfinder, made a chilling discovery as she analyzed the patterns of the silence. Captain Santos, she reported grimly, this was not an accident or a natural phenomenon. Something intelligent created this isolation deliberately. And based on the energy readings we are detecting, I think it is about to notice what we have been doing. As if summoned by her words, space around the human fleet began to distort. Something vast and ancient was awakening in the depths of the galaxy, and it had detected humanity's interference with its carefully maintained silence. The galaxy's enforcer of isolation was about to make its presence known. The communication relay station on Asteroid Base 7 was humanity's most ambitious project yet. Engineer Jake Thompson floated in zero gravity as he made final adjustments to the massive array of equipment that would connect 12 different star systems in real-time conversation. After months of work, they were about to activate the galaxy's first interstellar communication network in over 2,000 years. Dr. Okafor, all systems are showing green, Jake reported to the Pathfinder through his headset. We are ready to bring the entire network online simultaneously. Dr. Zara Okafor watched from her station aboard the ship as data streams flowed across her monitors. Each connected world represented a species that had been alone for millennia, now waiting to speak with others for the first time since the Great Silence began. Jake, remember that this system requires constant human monitoring, Zara warned. The moment we stop actively operating these relays, the communication links will fail. I understand, Dr. Okafor. We have volunteer operators standing by at every station. The activation was scheduled for exactly noon, Earth Standard Time. At communication stations across dozens of star systems, human volunteers sat ready to facilitate conversations between species that had never spoken to each other before. All stations report ready, announced Captain Maria Santos from the bridge of the Pathfinder. Activating the Hope Relay Network in 3, 2, 1 now. What happened next was perhaps the most beautiful moment in galactic history. The Resonari's crystal songs suddenly carried the voices of the Melody Weavers, who responded with harmonies that incorporated the deep thoughts of the Starlight philosophers. The Unity Collective's shared consciousness expanded to include input from the Cosmic Gardeners, while the Dream Weavers began connecting sleeping minds across multiple worlds. "It is working beyond our wildest expectations," reported Dr. Lisa Park as she monitored the cultural exchanges happening across the network. "Species are not just talking to each other, they are creating new forms of art and philosophy together." But the success came at a cost that humanity had not fully anticipated. The human operators maintaining the communication relays were experiencing severe psychological stress from prolonged exposure to the cosmic silence that surrounded each connection. "Dr. Martinez, we have a problem," called Jake from his station on Asteroid Base 7. "I have been operating this relay for 6 hours straight, and I am starting to feel like I am the only person in the universe." Dr. Rachel Martinez, monitoring operator mental health from her position aboard the Pathfinder, had been dreading this development. "Jake, you need to disconnect immediately and let your backup operator take over. The isolation effect is building up in your system." The cosmic silence that had isolated galactic civilizations for 2 millennia was not just an external force, it was infectious. Prolonged exposure to it could drive humans into the same crushing loneliness that had affected alien species for centuries. "I can hold on a little longer," Jake protested, his voice sounding strained and distant. "The Melody Weavers are in the middle of composing a new symphony with the Resonari. I do not want to interrupt their first collaboration in 2,000 years. "Jake, that is an order," Captain Santos interrupted firmly. "Disconnect now and report to medical for evaluation." The rotation system that Captain Santos implemented required constant management. Human operators could only work 4-hour shifts before the isolation effect began to impact their mental health. Even then, many volunteers needed days of recovery time between assignments. "We are asking our people to expose themselves to cosmic loneliness in order to fight cosmic loneliness," Dr. Martinez observed during their weekly psychological review. "The irony is not lost on me." But despite the challenges, volunteers kept coming forward. Teachers, musicians, radio operators, storytellers, anyone who understood the importance of communication stepped up to help maintain the galaxy's first interstellar network in millennia. "I know the risks," said Rebecca Chin as she prepared for her first shift operating a communication relay. "But these species have been alone for 2,000 years. If 4 hours of my loneliness can help end 2 millennia of theirs, then it is worth it." The network continued to grow as more isolated civilizations were discovered and connected. Each new species added their unique voice to the galactic conversation, sharing knowledge, art, and perspectives that had been locked away for centuries. The quantum calculators shared mathematical theorems that solved problems the Starlight philosophers had been debating for generations. The bioshapers offered genetic techniques that helped the cosmic gardeners restore worlds damaged by isolation. The time chroniclers contributed historical records that filled gaps in everyone's understanding of the pre-silence era. "Captain, the psychological transformation happening across the galaxy is remarkable," Dr. Park reported during one of their regular briefings. "Species that had given up on the future are suddenly making long-term plans. Birth rates are increasing. Suicide rates are dropping. Hope is literally spreading from world to world." But as the communication network expanded, it began to attract unwanted attention. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy disturbances in the galactic core region, and the disturbances were moving toward human-controlled space. "Dr. Okafor, something big is coming our way," reported Lieutenant Tom Bradley from his sensor station. "Energy signatures unlike anything we have seen before, and they are heading directly for our communication relay positions." The attack came without warning. Asteroid Base 7 simply went silent in the middle of a routine communication session. Jake Thompson and his entire crew of 26 human operators vanished from all contact, their relay station surrounded by a field of absolute darkness that blocked all signals. "Captain, we have lost contact with Base 7, Dr. Okafor reported with growing alarm. "All communication with that sector has been completely cut off." The darkness that surrounded the base was not natural. It was a weapon of pure isolation, designed to subject anyone trapped within it to complete sensory deprivation and total disconnection from all other minds. "This is the force that created the Great Silence," Captain Santos realized as she studied the sensor readings. "It has noticed our interference and is fighting back." For 3 days, the 26 human operators trapped in the isolation field experienced what no human had ever endured: complete and total silence. No voices, no signals, no contact with anything beyond their own thoughts. It was the same cosmic loneliness that had been inflicted on alien species for 2,000 years, concentrated into a weapon of pure psychological torture. "We almost lost them," Dr. Martinez reported after the rescue operation finally succeeded in penetrating the isolation field. Another day of that level of sensory deprivation and their minds would have been permanently damaged. But even in the face of this escalating conflict, humanity refused to abandon their mission. The galaxy species had been alone too long, and humans were determined to ensure that no one would face that kind of isolation again. "Dr. Okafor," came an urgent message from Captain Santos. "Our deep space sensors are detecting the source of the isolation fields. There is something massive in the galactic core, and it is actively maintaining the communication blockade." "What kind of something?" Zara asked. "I think we are about to find out. It is sending us a message." The communication that came through their systems was unlike anything they had experienced. It was not transmitted through their equipment but somehow implanted directly into their minds, carrying the weight of millennia and the authority of something vast beyond human comprehension. "I am the curator," the voice announced, its mental presence filling every corner of their consciousness. "You have interfered with my work for the last time." As the entity that had enforced galactic silence for 2,000 years revealed itself, Dr. Zara Okafor realized that humanity was about to face their greatest challenge yet. They were not just fighting to maintain communication between species, they were fighting against something that believed isolation was the only path to peace. But if humanity had learned anything from their journey across the galaxy, it was that no problem was too big to solve through communication, understanding, and the stubborn refusal to accept that anyone should face the universe alone. The battle for the galaxy's voice was about to begin. The entity that called itself the Curator materialized around Captain Maria Santos and her fleet like a living nightmare made of dark energy and cosmic loneliness. Its presence was so vast that looking at it was like trying to comprehend an entire galaxy with the naked eye. Dr. Zara Okafor felt her mind struggling to process something that existed on a scale beyond human understanding. "You are the ones responsible for breaking my silence." The Curator's voice resonated directly inside their thoughts, carrying the weight of 2,000 years of absolute authority. "I have maintained galactic peace for millennia through necessary isolation. Your interference ends now." Engineer Jake Thompson, still recovering from his traumatic experience in the isolation field, worked frantically at his communication console to maintain their network connections. "Dr. Okafor, it is not just talking to us. It is actively trying to sever every communication link we have established." Across the galaxy, the Hope relay stations began flickering and failing as the Curator focused its attention on humanity's communication network. The Resonari's crystal songs faded into static. The Melody Weaver's symphonies dissolved into silence. The Unity Collective's shared consciousness began fragmenting once again. "Stop this interference," the Curator demanded, its mental voice growing more insistent with each passing moment. "You do not understand what you are destroying. I created the Great Silence to save this galaxy from itself." Dr. Lisa Park, studying the entity's communication patterns from her anthropology station, made a disturbing discovery. "Captain, this thing is not just enforcing isolation. It is feeding on it. The more alone and hopeless species become, the stronger this entity grows." The Curator began projecting images directly into the minds of the human crew, showing them visions of the galaxy before the Great Silence. Wars between star systems, species enslaving each other, entire civilizations destroyed through cultural contamination and resource conflicts. "You see the chaos that communication brings?" the Curator explained as the horrific images played in their minds. "Species fought endlessly when they could reach each other. They exploited differences, destroyed weaker civilizations, turned diversity into a weapon of conquest." Captain Santos struggled to maintain her composure as the traumatic visions overwhelmed her senses. That was not communication's fault. That was the fault of beings who chose conflict over cooperation. "Choice is the problem," the Curator replied coldly. "Given the ability to choose, species inevitably choose violence. I removed that choice. I gave them peace through isolation." But even as the Curator fought to restore its silence, something remarkable was happening throughout the galaxy. The species that had been reconnected through humanity's network refused to give up their newfound hope, even as their communication links flickered and failed. "We remember now," sang Elder Chime of Stars across a degrading Resonari transmission. "We remember that we are not alone in the universe. Even if the silence returns, we will not forget what we have learned. Master composer Soft Wind Through Reeds echoed the sentiment from the Melody Weaver homeworld. The symphony has awakened in our hearts. We will continue to play our part, whether or not we can hear the other instruments. Dr. Rachel Martinez, monitoring the psychological state of reconnected species, reported something that gave the human crew hope. Captain, the isolation syndrome is not returning to the alien populations. Even with communication links failing, they are maintaining the psychological benefits of knowing they are not alone. Jake Thompson was pushing the Hope Relay technology far beyond its designed limits, working desperately to maintain connections as the curator actively tried to sever them. Dr. Okafor, I need more human operators. The system requires constant manual adjustment, and the psychological strain is getting worse. Jake, we have already rotated every available volunteer twice today. Our people cannot handle much more exposure to the isolation fields. Then we need to try something different, Jake said, his voice determined despite his exhaustion. What if instead of fighting this thing we try to understand it? Dr. Zara Okafor looked at the young engineer with growing interest. What do you mean? The curator keeps talking about maintaining peace through isolation. But Dr. Park said it feeds on loneliness. What if this entity has been alone for so long that it has forgotten what healthy communication looks like? The idea was radical and dangerous, but it began to make sense as the crew thought about it. The curator had been enforcing galactic silence for 2,000 years, with no one to talk to except itself. It had become the ultimate example of the isolation it imposed on others. Captain, Dr. Park reported with growing excitement, Jake might be onto something. The curator's communication style shows all the markers of extreme isolation syndrome. It cannot distinguish between healthy cooperation and destructive conflict because it has been alone too long. You think this ancient entity is suffering from cosmic loneliness? Captain Santos asked. I think it is drowning in it, Dr. Park replied. And it is projecting its own pain onto the entire galaxy. The breakthrough came when Dr. Okafor made a simple but profound decision. Instead of trying to fight the curator's interference with their communication network, she opened a direct channel to the entity itself. Curator, she said, speaking aloud even though she knew the entity could hear her thoughts, when was the last time you had a real conversation with someone? The question seemed to catch the ancient being off guard. For the first time since it had revealed itself, the curator's overwhelming presence wavered slightly. I do not engage in conversation, it replied after a long pause. I maintain order. I preserve peace. I prevent the chaos that communication inevitably brings. That is not an answer to my question, Zara pressed gently. I asked when you last spoke with someone as an equal, as a friend. When did you last share your thoughts not to give orders, but simply to connect with another consciousness? Connection leads to conflict, the curator insisted, but its mental voice carried less certainty than before. This is a fundamental law of existence. No, Captain Santos joined the conversation. Connection leads to understanding. Conflict only happens when we stop listening to each other. As the conversation continued, other species across the galaxy began adding their voices to the discussion through the failing communication network. The Resonari sang songs of friendship. The Melody Weavers composed harmonies of cooperation. The Unity Collective shared memories of peaceful collaboration. This is impossible, the curator protested as the galaxy-wide conversation grew stronger despite its attempts to silence it. Species cannot cooperate without exploitation. Peace cannot exist without dominance. Then you have been alone too long, Dr. Okafor said with compassion in her voice. You have forgotten what friendship looks like. You have forgotten that connection is possible without conquest. For the first time in 2,000 years, the curator found itself surrounded by the very thing it had tried to destroy, genuine, hopeful communication between different forms of consciousness. And for the first time since it had created the Great Silence, the ancient entity began to wonder if perhaps it had been wrong. I have been maintaining this responsibility alone for so long, the curator admitted, its mental voice carrying vulnerability that had not existed before. The burden of preventing galactic war, of protecting species from each other? No one has shared this weight with me. You do not have to carry it alone anymore, Captain Santos offered. That is what communication is for. That is what cooperation means. We share the difficult problems so no one has to solve them by themselves. As the curator wavered between its ancient programming and the possibility of connection, the galaxy held its breath. The fate of interstellar communication hung in the balance, dependent on whether an entity that had enforced isolation for millennia could learn to trust in the power of conversation. The transformation of the curator began slowly, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through clouds after the longest night in galactic history. Dr. Zara Okafor watched from her station aboard the Pathfinder as the ancient entity that had enforced silence for 2 millennia struggled to remember how to simply talk with someone rather than command them. "I observed a stellar nursery forming in the spiral arm yesterday," the curator communicated hesitantly, its mental voice carrying uncertainty instead of its usual absolute authority. "The birth of new stars is beautiful. I had forgotten to mention beauty to anyone in 2,000 years. Captain Maria Santos smiled as she listened to the entity's first tentative attempt at normal conversation. "It sounds wonderful, curator. What made this particular star formation special to you?" "The young stars were singing to each other through gravitational waves," the curator replied, and for the first time, its voice carried wonder instead of fear. "I had been so focused on preventing communication that I had stopped listening to the natural harmonies of the universe itself." Engineer Jake Thompson, working to restore the Hope Relay network that had been damaged during the confrontation, looked up from his controls with amazement. "Dr. Okafor, the curator is not fighting our communication systems anymore. In fact, it seems to be helping us repair them." Across the galaxy, species that had been cut off during the battle were suddenly hearing each other's voices again, but this time the connections were stronger and clearer than ever before. The curator's vast network, originally designed to block communication, was being transformed into the most powerful communication system the galaxy had ever known. "Great Guardian," sang Elder Chime of Stars from the Resonari homeworld, "you carried our burden alone for so long. Now let us share the responsibility of caring for the galaxy together." The curator's response was filled with emotion that it had not expressed in millennia. I had forgotten that protection could be a shared task. I thought I had to bear all the weight of preventing war by myself." Master composer Softwind Through Reeds added the melody weaver's perspective. "Your desire to protect us came from love, even when we could not understand it. Now let us show you what protection looks like when we work together instead of alone." But the most profound moment came when the Unity Collective, their shared consciousness restored across multiple worlds, offered something that changed everything. "Join us in sharing thoughts and experiences, Ancient One. You need not make decisions about galactic peace by yourself anymore." Dr. Lisa Park, monitoring the psychological transformation occurring across the galaxy, made an observation that surprised everyone. "Captain, the curator is not just learning to communicate again. It is teaching us something about the universe that we never could have discovered alone." As the ancient entity shared its vast perspective and millennia of accumulated knowledge, species across the galaxy began to understand the true interconnectedness of all life. The curator had witnessed the birth and death of stars, the evolution of civilizations, and the deep patterns that connected all conscious beings. "I have observed so much," the curator shared, its communication becoming more natural with each exchange. "Worlds forming from cosmic dust, consciousness emerging from simple chemistry, the incredible complexity that develops when matter learns to think and feel. I wanted to preserve all of this beauty, but in my fear of losing it, I nearly destroyed what made it truly beautiful." "What made it beautiful?" asked Dr. Rachel Martinez, who had been monitoring the mental health impacts of the Galactic Communication Network. "The connections between conscious minds," the curator replied with what sounded like awe. "I had forgotten that diversity becomes stronger through unity, not weaker through separation." The galaxy-wide conversation that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Billions of voices from hundreds of species shared their stories, their hopes, their dreams of what the universe could become. The curator, originally designed to prevent such communication, found itself at the center of the greatest conversation in galactic history. "This is what I was truly meant to protect," the curator realized as it processed the vast symphony of voices flowing through its transformed network. Not just individual species, but the potential for all conscious beings to understand and support each other. Species across the galaxy began working together on projects that had been impossible during the Age of Isolation. The Resonari's crystal technology merged with Melody Weaver harmonics to create art that could be experienced across light years. The Unity Collective's consciousness-sharing techniques helped isolated individuals feel connected to something greater than themselves. "Captain," Jake reported with growing excitement, "we are not just maintaining communication anymore. We are facilitating active collaboration on a scale never before imagined. Species are sharing technology, art, philosophy, and even consciousness itself." The culmination came when representatives from every connected species proposed creating something together, a cosmic symphony that would celebrate the end of the Great Silence and the beginning of a new age of galactic cooperation. Every species will contribute their unique voice, explained Softwind through reeds as she helped coordinate the massive artistic project. The Resonari will provide harmonic foundations, the melody weavers will create the melodic structures, and the starlight philosophers will contribute the underlying meaning. What about humanity? Asked Captain Santos. What is our contribution to this galactic symphony? Hope, replied Elder Chime of Stars simply. Humanity's contribution is the hope that brought us all together. The curator, no longer the enforcer of silence but its newest convert to conversation, added its own voice to the symphony. Its contribution was not words or music, but the fundamental frequencies of spacetime itself, the underlying rhythm that connected all matter and energy in the universe. For 2,000 years, I believed that silence meant safety, the curator shared as the cosmic symphony began to build across the galaxy. Now I understand that silence was simply fear. True safety comes from ensuring that every voice can be heard, that no consciousness faces existence alone. Dr. Zara Okafor floated outside the Pathfinder in her space suit, watching as the stars themselves seemed to pulse with the rhythm of countless civilizations singing together. Around her, the galaxy was alive with communication, cooperation, and connection. Captain Santos, she transmitted back to the ship, do you remember why we started this mission? We wanted to find out if we were alone in the universe, Maria replied from the bridge. And what did we discover? That no one was ever truly alone. They just needed someone willing to listen, and someone brave enough to speak hope into the silence. As the cosmic symphony continued across the galaxy, children from hundreds of different species experienced something their parents had never known, the sound of a universe alive with voices, all different but all connected through the simple miracle of communication. They would grow up in a galaxy where calling out into space meant someone would always answer, where being different was cause for celebration rather than fear, and where the most important truth of existence was that no one ever had to face the universe alone. The age of silence was over. The age of the cosmic conversation had begun. And at its heart was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the stubborn, beautiful refusal to accept that anyone should be abandoned in the darkness. V&D.